Hi there, my name is Tushar Johri, and welcome to this episode of the podcast Top SCR Nuggets. I'm the proud owner of this growing LinkedIn community that is dedicated in helping you clear your GARP SCR exam. I have provided the link of this LinkedIn community in the description of this video. For this episode, I've invited one of our LinkedIn community member. Her name is Valentina Ricciuti. In the episode, you will hear Valentina share her preparation strategy for the exam. And you may also pick up a lot of tips, tricks, and techniques that she is going to share. Let me tell you a little bit more about Valentina. Valentina appeared for her exam in October 2023 and cleared it in the first attempt. She joined the LinkedIn community a few months before she appeared for the exam. After joining our LinkedIn community, she attempted all the free practice tests and did exceedingly well in all of them. Now, these are the same free practice tests that I have shared with all of you. While Valentina did exceedingly well in the practice test, she never shied away from asking questions and clarifying her doubts about any of the topic that she was not clear with. There's one quality that sets her apart from most of the community members, that she was always very curious to know every topic in detail and in depth. I remember my discussion with Valentina on topics like radiative forcing and probability of default curve. Valentina had queries um, about what is this radiative forcing, why does it happen, and how it is going to unfold in future. Similarly, about the probability of default, she wanted to know why does this curve shifts to the right because of the climate change. I remember exchanging a lot of messages with Valentina to help her understand these topics, and till a point that she was convinced that she is clear and has a good grip on these topics. Fortunately for all of you, I've documented these explanations in the post and I've posted it on the blog. So, whenever you're going to visit the blog next and you want to know about these topics, please search for these topics, and I'm sure you will enjoy reading these explanation. Coming back to this episode, you can expect to hear the preparation strategy, the tips, the tricks, the techniques that are required for clearing the exam from Valentina. So I'm sure you are curious to hear what Valentina has to share. So why don't we just go over and listen to what Valentina is going to share? Come along. Hi, Valentina. Welcome to
Hi.
this episode of this podcast. And it has been a pleasure, and I have been looking forward to having this episode recorded with you. So, a very warm welcome to this episode. And
Thank you very much.
I'm sure I think the listeners of this episode, I'm sure they will pick up really important points that we are going to discuss, which I believe are going to help them in the preparation for their exam, the GRPSCR exam. So to start with, Valentina, maybe I'll request you to just introduce yourself and where you're coming from, something about your professional experience. So let's get started with that first.
Yes, of course. Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for this very invitation and for your kind help during the preparation of the exam again. And what about me? I'm from Italy, precisely from Tuscany, and I work for a major commercial bank. And I've been working in this industry since 2009, so it's been more than a decade. And I'm a certified internal auditor. So I work in this corporate as a methodologist into the internal audit function.
Super.
So what I work, what I do daily is to deal with risks. And that's the reason why I choose this certification, because I needed to go below the surface of those topics.
Good to know. So, and what I believe that the reason that you chose SCR exam was because it would have complemented, or it would complement the work that you're already doing.
Yes.
While you're trying to think about registering for the exam, were there any other certifications that you were trying to choose from, or you're very clear that you were very determined to take up SCR exam only?
Okay. Well, at first, I was not really sure of which one I had to choose.
Okay.
I found out about this certification through internet searches.
Okay.
Because, as I told you, I needed to specialize in the risk management of those topics.
Right.
I needed an intersection between ESG topics and risks. Risks is the core of my profession. And so this one, I do believe it's the one that fits better my needs. And that's the reason why.
Okay, clear. So do you recall when did you actually register for this exam, Valentina?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
I am asking as to, do you remember when did you register for this exam?
When? I started study maybe 6 months earlier than the exam. And I take the exam in November. But the registration was quite late. It was maybe in October or September. I started earlier and then I registered for the exam, yes. So I didn't have any mock exam except your blocks.
Okay. So, and this was your first attempt, right? So this was the very first attempt. Yeah, it's another amazing feat, because I think passing the exam in the first go is an achievement in itself. So really good.
Yes, it's a nice sensation. It was also a luckiness matter. It's not just studying, it's also the day.
Correct. That's true.
You pick the correct day.
Correct. So just to go a little deeper into it, Valentina, so as you were mentioning that you started studying about 6 months back.
Yes.
Did you prepare any strategy for the preparation as such? What was, if you can share, what was your strategy that you had adopted for the preparation of this exam?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, I work as a full-time professional, so I had to take as much time as I needed for the preparation, and I did realize the schedule, but it was quite flexible, and that's why 6 months long. I set some intermediate goals for myself, and it wasn't always so easy to stick with those goals. Sometimes I set weekly goals and not daily goals. It was something like at the end of the week, I have to have been finished the second chapter, something like this. At the very beginning, the strategy was only in the numbers of the chapters. So we have 8 chapters, and so it's like more than 1 chapters each month, something like this.
Correct.
Because I didn't know the complexity of the topics. So I cannot adjust and align the schedule relating to the effective complexity of each topic.
Right.
It's something very flexible. You have to organize. I do believe you have to organize, but be quite flexible in the organization.
Correct. I think you brought in a very relevant point, which a lot of aspirants for the exam ask. As most of us, we were in or we are in full-time job, right? And then you need to take out time for the preparation as well. But there we always find few of those days where we are either because of the excessive work, or we are tired, or we are not in the mood to study. So there would have been such situations with you as well. And considering the kind of study this exam demands, that if you take a long break, then you tend to forget what you were studying a few days back. So in situations like these, like say for example in a week you were not able to study for a few days. So
Yes.
how do you really balance that out so that you can maintain the kind of continuity that is required for the preparation?
For me, a strategy that works is to um, recall what I just read it and take a step back. Take a step
Okay.
back and reread again what you have read some days before,
Yeah.
and then start again. If you have a
Okay.
stop, if you do not have a stop, maybe you don't have to go through this process. But if you
Right.
need to stop, also for vacation or something like this, or maybe you have days that are very busy, I think it's better take a step back. Okay, let's restart again. Where
Right.
we were, let's start there. It's probably something that help you in the process to have
Right.
some sort of continuity during the time, because matters because there's a lot of chapters, there's a lot of
Correct.
topics, and so you have to have clear in your mind. You have to have clear folders, information folders in your mind, and
Very
to
well
follow a
said.
process, to follow a narration.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you keep any a fixed number of hours that you would spend in a day, or maybe spend a little time over the weekend? Did you keep it that way, or you had a very flexible schedule for yourself?
Well, as I told you, it was quite flexible. But what I can say is that at least, as a minimum, I spent at least 3 hours a week, at
Okay.
least, at
Okay.
least.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, yeah, probably. But sometimes maybe 5 hours. Sometimes maybe it's just three.
Okay.
Sometimes more.
Okay.
Sometimes I also needed to study during nighttime to maintain the pace
Yeah.
at study time. So
Right. Right. So
it
you
really
had
depends.
so you had a pretty flexible schedule that you have prepared for yourself, and as long as you are totally focused and you are able to give some quality time, so you ensured as you started that you had some weekly goals, and then with this flexible schedule you s- you probably would have tried to achieve those weekly goals somehow,
Yes,
so by adjusting your
yes,
schedule.
yes, because sometimes daily goals is not obtainable,
Correct.
uh, and so you have to focus on a longer time. And I think week time is correct
Okay. Okay.
because you
Good.
have also the weekend,
True.
and you do not, and you can use those hours.
Right. True. Good. So coming to studying, you know, and the kind of reference material that you chose for studying, what material did you refer for studying, Valentina?
The starting point was the book. But my approach is always to go below the surface. And
Yeah.
so I think a full understanding of the topics covered is critical to the success of the exam because that is a very operational. So
Correct.
you need to read newspapers and go deeper. And in this phase, your blog was a huge help. Let me say this clear because, well,
Right.
that's it, and it's true.
Right. And STR also, or rather GRP, prescribes a lot of extra reading which are there. Did you also go through those extra readings as well along with the book?
Yes, I've also studied the extra readings. I do believe it's something that closes the cycle. I found them helpful and also I can say complementary to the topics. It's something. It's like you're missing some bricks in the wall.
Okay. Okay. Because these readings that are prescribed by GRP are pretty exhaustive, right? So there's a lot of verbose, there's a lot of a lot many details are mentioned. So did you refer to those extra readings that are prescribed all the readings, or these were just selective readings that
The
um,
selected readings. Yes,
selective readings?
sometimes I expanded also the lecture, but
Okay. Okay. So probably this is for the topics which are not very clear or you wanted to read in a little more detail, then you would take up these extra readings as well. That is what my
yes,
understanding is.
yes. Also internet searches and your blog, of course, as well.
Right.
For example, I can recall the climate lag concept. That
Right.
was quite confusing for me at first. And so I
Mm.
had to do some searches to
Right.
understand what really is climate lag, because I couldn't understand physical risk models without
Okay.
this concept.
Right. Right. So yeah, I think at least for the first time readers, it may not be very clear on the first read itself. So that is where you have to probably do some extra searches and something to easily understand it. And yeah, so there are
Yes,
topics like that. True.
yes. As I mentioned, it's like you have folders,
Mm.
thematic folders in your mind. And if you have a folder that is quite empty, or if
Mm.
you feel unsure, you
Yeah.
have to
Read.
strengthen. Yes, yes, you
Right.
have to go deeper.
Good. Good. So as you were reading, they are in the book itself. So in the book, there at the end of every chapter, there are questions, right? So, but those questions, these are not, they do not come very close to the exam question, right? So, how did you practice to self-assess your understanding?
Yes, correct. If you want to understand your level of preparation, if you're ready for the exam, you have to test yourself in some way.
Right.
And mock test is a huge help.
Right.
It's not just to please you, but really your blog was very helpful. Also because, as I mentioned, I did the registration just a few weeks before the exam.
Okay.
And so I didn't have the mock test given with registration with GARP.
Okay.
Yes, in the book, the tests are not really aligned for what you will find in the exam. The exam is very operative. You are not a student at the exam. You are a consultant. You are a member of the board of directors,
True.
but you are not a student. And
Correct.
in the book, you are treated like a student.
True.
And that's the difference.
Right. Very well said. I think that's a very valid point. I think those questions are, they are slightly misleading, I would say, in the sense that, they do not convey the right amount of difficulty level. They may be good for revising,
Yes.
but they do not convey the actual difficulty of the questions that come in the actual exam. Right.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. You are a professional at the exam.
Right.
You are not
True.
someone who's taking an exam.
True. Very true. So I think while there were 8 chapters, Valentina. So were there any chapters that you found maybe difficult or or less interesting to go through, and you just had to slog, you had to make some extra efforts to finish those and try hard to understand those chapters? Were there any chapters in the curriculum?
Yes, some chapters are, in my opinion, more complex. It's my opinion. Probably it's not for everybody the same. I personally found the chapters on scenario analysis and also net zero more challenging than the other. And again, in this case, I helped myself with your blog, with researches on internet, on the newspaper as well, because there are specialized newspaper on internet that could give you a help.
Okay. Okay. And do you recall what kind of, did you subscribe to any newsletter or any specific websites that you recall referring to, so that can help the other people as well? Do you recall that?
Well, for example, the big consultancy corporation, they are very specialized, and they are specializing even more in time, and they publish news and researches, and so
the papers, etc., etc., the research papers, or okay.
Or other site of information, of ESG information, and finance filed. Well, now I'm thinking about Italian site, but I do believe that at international level you have a lot of information sites on ESG topics.
Right. Okay. Okay. So yeah, these papers can also help. You're right. I mean, if you want to really get deeper and try to understand these topics, so I'm sure there's a lot of obviously there are a lot of research papers, websites which provide these information, and sometimes, and depending on the experience and interest of people, they can choose to refer to these sites and papers to understand any topic in detail.
Yes, and also to have a concrete feedback. For example, for carbon market in theory could be quite tricky, but maybe if you read some newspapers, some articles, some feedback in the real life, it gets easier to understand.
Right. True. So, all right. So I think as part of the preparation, and did you, I think the exam was somewhere in October or early November. Did you have any plan as to when do you want it, or when did you want to finish the entire curriculum so that you can revise and then attempt the mock exams later? Was that your plan, or how did you actually practice I think there was a full length mock paper which was given by GRP. So I believe you would have attempted it after finishing the curriculum. Was that your plan, or how did you?
I approached the mock exam provided by GARP just after the phase of revise.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to waste this occasion. I have something that's really close to the real exam, so I don't want to waste it.
True.
That's the approach that I chose.
Right. And do you recall as to how many times did you revise, or was it,
I do believe maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks for revise, reread again all, and go deeper in topics where I feel more weak.
Yeah.
So it's a phase of strengthening and recall, memorize some concept, because you have to understand, but there is also part that you have to memorize. For example, the ERM framework, or other topics, formulas, for example.
Right. So it may have been more than one cycle of revision that you had to do. So every time that you take the paper and then you analyze it and see, and then discover that there are certain topics that you're not able to answer correctly, then again, you tend to go back to the book and revise again. Yes. So that revision cycles keep on continuing till the actual exam, I think.
Yes, the last 2 weeks was the final revise. Let's start from the very beginning and close to the end.
Right.
That's the approach. But during the studying time, during those time frames, those 6 months, I have time to go back, step back, and get a step forward, and then come back again, and then, okay, let's see what internet say about it. Okay, I didn't understand it. Let's ask to someone.
Right.
That was the approach. Last 2 weeks, just an end-to-end approach to the entire process.
Good. One more point. I think, since you already started very early on, and and I know that you tend to go into detail while you're trying to study. A very important point that comes up is to how do you maintain the notes that you're studying, right? So when you're studying, you tend to make some notes while you're trying to study. What kind of notes did you maintain? Because I know you were trying to get into details of the things, and the notes should be such that when you refer to them after finishing a chapter or two, when you're trying to revise and when you refer to the notes, it will help you do the revision quicker. Or
Mm.
the notes should be such a way that you are able to remember the information for a long time so that it can help you while you're taking a practice test or you're able to recall the information. So what kind of notes do you prepare? Do you have just the text, or do you use a lot of diagrams or anything
I
like
do
that?
believe it's a blended approach. Sometimes it is something is just on the book. For example, case studies.
Yeah,
I didn't have any needs to rewrite the same case study,
yeah.
but some topics, maybe the one that I needed to deepen by
Hmm.
internet or other sources. I can recall, for example, the radiative force. I don't know if you remember, but I asked you about the radiative force,
Right.
and so I take a hand note because I feel that if you write really
Yeah.
with the paper and the pen, it helps you also to
Remember.
fix in your mind. Yes, and to memorize. I have the
True.
radiative force notes all handwritten.
Okay. Okay. Good. Because what when we are discussing, normally I ask people to make use of a lot of images or tables or something, so that they can organize the information. And if you are using some kind of diagram, some kind of, say, doodles or something like that, it helps you remember for a very long time rather than just taking the text notes, right? Because the text is already there in the book. If you rewrite it, if you are able to organize the information in kind of a diagram or something like that, it helps you remember for a very long time. But it totally depends on individual to
Yeah.
individual.
Well, I have a very visual memory.
Mm.
So if I enlight the book literally with colors, I will recall the colors.
Oh, right.
So
That's another way of doing it.
yes, and so I know it's strange, but it's an
No, no.
approach. I can remember colors,
Yeah.
and so I have to fix in my mind the image, the real
Mm.
image of the page.
Right.
It's like I have something printed in my mind.
Right.
But I need
So,
colors. I know it's not paperless and it's not so ESG, but that's the traditional approach. I need
but
paper and I need to take notes and lights and
yeah, yeah. So I
traditional.
think, yeah, that's another way, I think. And as I said, it's every individual has their own way of doing it. There's nothing right or wrong in that. So as long as it helps you, and this is the way that we have been reading and trying to understand and recall and study. So I think it's everybody has their own way of actually doing it. So thanks for sharing that. So it's we were nearing the exam date. Did you prepare any kind of exam strategy for yourself as to how you would tackle the questions, or if they're difficult questions, or you would the way that you will start the exam paper? Did you have any strategy in mind?
Well, as I told you, I've spent more time reviewing during the previous week, the very previous week,
Uh-huh.
weeks of the exam, before the exam.
Right.
Um, and then I prepared the travel because I'm not in the city where the venue center is, and so it
Okay.
was um, I need to prepare logistically the trip,
Okay.
and it was a disaster.
Really?
Really, because my bus got cancelled, my train was late, so I
Oh,
was planned to arrive 2 hours before, and I arrived 5 minutes later.
really?
Yeah, yeah. But
Oh,
but anyway, it is in aggregate. There is a lesson, and it's that you cannot prevent all the unexpected events that could happen the day of the exam. So
right.
try to organize at your best, but stay ready for any kind of problems that could emerge.
So it is really testing your risk management skills,
Yeah,
Valentina.
yeah. It was really a crazy trip.
I can imagine. I think you can, the kind of stress that, when you're entering
Yes,
the exam hall 5 minutes late and you know the kind of question and the kind of test it is. So it adds
yes,
to the
yes,
stress. And
yes. That's
okay,
the point. That's the point. That
okay,
when I arrived at the exam, I was breathless,
yeah.
and then I entered immediately
Mm,
at the room for the exam, and probably also for this situation, the first question seems very, very tricky.
mm,
Um, but then I take my time to acclimatize. And I
right,
think it's something very important. It's not the
right.
first time that I take an exam
Mm,
similar to the
mm,
SCR GARP,
right.
because I also get another certification on an international program,
Hmm.
and the approach is similar.
Okay.
And on the very beginning, you have to acclimatize to the test. The first questions always, in my experience, always seem more difficult than what they really are. When
Right,
you arrive at the end, you review those
right.
flagged questions,
Mm,
and it doesn't seem so tricky in the end. But in the very
correct.
beginning, they seem so.
Yeah, so that's the reason, I have, I've been asking this question to almost everybody that I've spoken to, that, how were your initial or the first 15, 20 minutes of the exam? So, and, as you also mentioned, and you rightly mentioned, you need to get used to the
Yes,
exam itself. And
yes,
the first 10, 15 minutes will always be tricky. You'll be blank. You'll find it hard, or you will feel that you are not getting all the answers. So I think the situation would have been similar with you as well,
yeah.
Valentina.
What I can suggest, and for me it worked, is to flag those questions.
Okay,
If you feel that you are tense, flag the question. When you feel that there's a psychological tension
correct.
that you are encountering, just flag those questions.
Mm, okay,
And then I saw them on the end of the exam. I arrived at the end and then restart again with those
right.
flagged questions.
Mm, true. True. So how long did you remember how long did you take to complete your exam?
I remember finishing early, probably an hour before the time ran out.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because after the first phase of acclimatization to
Hmm.
get accustomed to the exam, it was a smooth process in the end.
Okay. Okay.
And so,
So do you recall as to how much time did you take, or how many questions did you complete before you came into the flow, or you picked up speed?
well, probably uh, the first 15 question was quite tricky,
Hmm.
and they took more time
Right.
in proportion
True.
than the other questions.
Okay.
I
Okay.
cannot say it cannot stay in the minute.
True. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because these initial questions tend to take a little more time because then you're just getting used to
Yes,
the environment, the questions, and the exam itself. So,
yes, yes,
although we say on paper you should be taking 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes because the exam is 180 minutes and 80 questions, and as per that calculation, but the initial questions will take time till the
yes,
person is used to it, and then as you progress, you will pick up speed.
yes. And also, I think there is another difficulty for
Hmm.
the not English speaker. You have
Mm.
also to acclimatize, to switch off from your
Oh
language
yes.
to the other language. And
Okay.
so it's probably quite tricky also for that reason.
All
You
right.
really need to switch off.
Yeah, yeah, and you'll have to keep translating and trying to understand the question as well, and how quickly you're able to do that, and that's also
Yeah.
a struggle. Yeah, yeah, very
Yeah,
valid.
you have to pass the break point when
Hmm.
you're not translating anymore, when you are
Yeah,
just reading.
reading.
There's a point when you are talking and you are reading and you are not translating anymore.
Mm. So that's also a very valid point. at least for people for whom English is not the first language. That's
Yeah.
always struggle. All right, and after you finish your exam and you came out
Mhm.
of the exam hall, how confident that you were you that you will pass the exam?
Well, ups and downs. Initially, I was quite confident, but having to wait so long because it takes a few weeks to get the result, gets you to overthink about
Mm,
what you have answered. But anyway, I tried to not overthinking too much.
okay.
But I was quite confident at the beginning. Probably it was just a matter of rethinking to think, oh, probably that one was not correct. Uh, but anyway, when I have the trip to come back home, I reread some questions that was quite tricky. I remember, for example, the halocarbons, and I
Mm,
didn't remember which one was more dangerous
yeah,
between a selection of gases. And I remember these halocarbons, and it
yeah.
was correct. The answer at the end was correct, but I have to check it again.
All right, okay. That happens. That happens, especially when you have to travel back home, and the journey is a little longer. You tend
Yeah,
to recollect those questions when you're, seated on your seat. So it happens.
maybe randomly you are doing something that
Of course.
isn't related at all to the exam, and then, oh, what about this question?
Question.
Yeah, and it doesn't help at all.
That's true. That's true. So, obviously the results came, and then you passed with, really good scores. After taking the exam, after clearing the exam, Um, do you think this certification and whatever the learnings were there in the certification that helped in any way in complementing the work that you're trying to do, or do you think it has given some new opportunities at work or otherwise? What do you think if you look back on the learnings of the certification and any benefits from the certification if you were to think of?
Well, I think in the end it's extremely useful for internal auditing, and in particularly because it allows you to deepen
Mm,
the knowledge into increasingly important and relevant risks like ESG. For example, I'm Europe based, and so I'm thinking about the ACB choices,
mm,
the ACB program for the next years, and it's something very current, very daily matter.
mm, mm.
And so I think it's precious to deepen those topics because they encounter there daily.
Right.
If you read any risk assessment or any report, any international report about the relevance of the
Mm,
risks, you will
mm.
always find climate change.
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
some point, you will find climate change. You will find inflation, geopolitical issues, but you will find also climate issues.
Yeah, they are now an integral part of every business now,
Yeah.
irrespective of which business that you are into. These will become part of the discussion as part of your daily business. So, in summary, it really helped you, and it basically also not only helps you understand the fundamentals of these climate risk management, but uh, the learnings and the way that we approach different topics, it helps you in your regular work as well, right? The approach changes, and
Uh,
you're able to utilize the knowledge that you have gained as well as part of your regular work.
Uh, yes, I didn't start for the very scratch from zero
Right.
because I have already studied the existing body of law and ESG filed for
Mm,
the European reality. Uh, I also get some macroeconomic information about sustainability related matters, and I have a personal interest in
right.
those topics,
Okay.
also as a student. So
Right.
those helped for sure. Uh, but anyway, it was something complementary. I
Okay.
don't believe it's the end anyway.
Right.
It's not only the certification. The certification is the title, and you have a nice and huge syllabus below the certification, but it's not all.
Correct.
You have to integrate on daily basis. You have to be updated constantly.
Correct. It's also a very important point, because a lot of aspirants who are trying to read about SCR, they ask questions whether, if they acquire, or if they do the certification, will it really open up a lot of opportunities for them, or their pay scale will change, or it will be something that will happen magically. And then, and you also very rightly explained it, the certification is just a value addition. So it's like any certification, it helps you learn something more, but it has to be complemented by the work that you are trying to do.
It's also a good starting point.
Right.
If you are starting to deepen those topics, it's a good starting point.
Right.
And if you take the certification just for the title, it could be okay also get just the certification. But if you want to apply on your profession those concepts, you have to integrate.
Correct.
Because it's what the world is asking, because it's evolving. It's not still.
Correct.
And so it's something mandatory if you want to apply really in your profession those topics.
Right. Well said. All right. We are just towards the end now. Before we finish, any 5 tips that you would like to give to the future aspirants, or to the aspirants of this exam?
Okay. The first one probably is organization. Even if you are in a full-time, foremost, if you are in a full-time, you have to organize your study activities. Then you have to be curious. You have to be curious because I believe you have to go below the surface, because again, when you are at the exam venue, you are not asked to be a student. You are asked to be a professional. And so you have to be the knowledge of those topics.
True.
It's not just a matter of memorize and know more or less what this means. You have to be able to apply. So curiosity and go deep to the matter.
Very correct.
So the next one is understanding. Not memorize, not only memorize. There are some parts that you have to memorize, for example, formulas.
Right.
But it's not only memory. You have to understand.
Right.
Exercise, because you have to, again, acclimatize to this approach of test.
Right.
And probably the last one is trust. If you have studied, go to an exam with confidence. You can do it. So just try.
Very valid point. So I think these are really important points, Valentina, and it's like a summary of your entire journey, of your preparation for this exam. And thank you for sharing all those details, and especially these tips, which will, I'm sure all those who are listening to this episode will be able to pick up these points that will benefit them in the preparation. So both of us hope that anybody who's listening to this episode can really get benefited from the information that we were discussing, and they can apply as part of their preparation and pass this exam successfully. So thank you so much.
Well,
yeah, it would. I believe it will. So thank you, Valentina, for your time, and speak to you later then.
Thank you again. Thank you again for this very invitation, and again for your kind help during the preparation of the exam in the previous months.
All right. Okay, we'll end it here.
Okay. Bye. Thank you, Tisha.
Bye.